In today's episode, I'm going to talk you through doing your dishes or just provide some motivation to get you motivated to do your dishes. But I do encourage you to work along with the episode if at all possible. And I'm definitely going to give you some motivation. So let's get right into the episode. It's time to gear up for your dishwashing session. Maybe you need to kind of freshen up for the day and get presentable. Another thing you might want to do before diving into doing the dishes is straighten up the front entrance of your house. I don't like to feel like my living room / entry area is a mess and that someone's going to get a bad impression when they walk in. I like to kind of take care of that first before I dive into something that's going to take a little longer, like doing the dishes. I'm assuming you have some dishes to do if you're listening to this episode. If not, just work on something else, and maybe this will help you with keeping up on your dishes in the future and things like that. But the theme is everything dishes today. Now, doing the dishes isn't usually at the top of anyone's list of favorite chores. I realize some people do like it. However, I do encourage you to kind of find the joy in it. You don't want to always look at a task as just drudgery that you've got to push through for the end result. Now, obviously, sometimes that's the only way we can get through something. It's like, I have to do this. I'm going to just distract myself, listen to a podcast, and do the dishes. But there is something therapeutic about doing the dishes if you can get in that right mindset. So I encourage you to be positive about it. But the secret to doing dishes is just doing them regularly, because they take longer to do the longer you let them sit. They can build up. With a lot of household chores, when you procrastinate, nothing terrible happens. Okay, for example, if you procrastinate on cleaning the toilet, well, you might have to leave the cleaning product in a little bit longer, if you get a ring in the toilet bowl or something like that. But cleaning your bathroom today versus tomorrow doesn't make a huge difference. Whereas with the dishes, letting dishes sit overnight can make it much harder to do them. And not only is there, dried on food and build up and the risk of attracting pests, but it can kind of keep your house from functioning properly. It can cause you to even spend more money on food. You might end up ordering takeout. It can cause you not to do your other chores. It's just, dishes is something like laundry where you can fall behind on it, whereas other tasks might be okay to put off till the next day. Okay? So your home's always going to look messy if there's a pile of dirty dishes in the sink where it's like extending above the sink. Like, I don't mind a pile of dishes that's contained within the sink, but when you see it above the sink horizon, so to speak, your home can look messy, and people just tend to judge you on dirty dishes. And even if nobody else is going to see it, you could be judging yourself. And I don't ever encourage people to be hard on themselves, but this also isn't a podcast where I just tell you whatever you're doing is enough, everything's okay. Don't beat yourself up about it, but do something to solve the problem, if that makes sense. So no judgment here if you do have an overflowing sink right now. I'm here to help you tackle it. We've all been there. And even those of us who have kind of a good system going with dishes have those disasters, because life happens. So another place you don't want dishes piling up is on the kitchen table or coffee table, or even nightstands in the bedrooms, okay? Just keep in mind that when you procrastinate on washing the dishes, you are wasting time and energy because it's going to be harder to do it when you do it later. Obviously, that's true to an extent with other cleaning projects because it's easier to keep surfaces clean than to clean an excessively dirty surface. But with dishes, the job can get harder really quickly. Okay? Washing dishes while the food's still hot is so much easier than washing dried on food. So it's different than other cleaning tasks. Another thing with dishes is just the anticipation of the task can kind of weigh on you, and it can keep you from tackling other areas of your home because you know that doing the dishes is important to keeping your home sanitary, keeping it functioning, being able to prepare food instead of ordering takeout. You know how important it is, and when you don't want to do it, sometimes it causes you to just procrastinate on everything. So let's get into the episode. Hopefully by now you've geared up for your dishwashing session. If you haven't already started on dishes, it's time to get started. Maybe you need to gather dishes from around the house. Maybe your husband has an ice cream bowl on the nightstand. Maybe you have a glass on the ledge of your bathtub. Maybe you have to check a teenager's room for forgotten dishes. Just get all those dishes to the sink area. The reason I don't say put them in the sink is because with glasses and mugs, I've learned the hard way that they can break in the sink. So I like to just set those next to the sink. Whereas with silverware, plates, bowls, I will, put those in the sink. Okay. And sometimes you need to take things out of the sink to wash the sink, to have space to pre-rinse. So sometimes it makes more sense to just stack your dishes next to the sink when you're gearing up for a cleaning session. But the point is to gather them up from around the house, other parts of the kitchen, your dining room table, and just get them all together. Once you've done that, and of course I can talk faster than you can clean, so don't feel like you have to be in exact sync with this episode. To use these episodes effectively, you just need to stay on the broader task that I'm talking about or stay in the room that I'm talking about. In this case, we'd be talking about the kitchen. Once you gather up the dishes, don't leave the kitchen because then you're going to get sidetracked, and just kind of keep a focus on doing the dishes. In some kitchen cleaning sessions, I have you clear off the countertops first, put things away. But this is a focus for dishes. If you clicked on this episode, you probably just want to get your dishes done and you can worry about some other things later. Oftentimes, the first step in doing dishes is putting away clean stuff, and that can make it more of a daunting task. It can make it take longer. No judgment at all if you need to empty a drying rack or a dishwasher or both. A lot of us kind of start at that point, often when we're doing dishes. But in the future, it's a good idea to try to separate those two tasks by having a routine where you put away clean stuff at a different time than when you do the dishes. That way, your dishwashing session is not so time-consuming, so daunting, if you will. So that's something to keep in mind in the future. But a lot of us need to start out that session with putting away clean stuff. And you might be tempted to skip this step. You might be thinking, I'll just pile stuff on top of what's already in the drying rack. I just need to wash these dirty dishes. But I encourage you to empty that. And obviously with the dishwasher, if you want the benefit of using the dishwasher, you've got to empty first. But sometimes there's a temptation not to empty the drying rack. If you're like me and you have both a dishwasher and a drying rack, let's get all those dishes put away. The reason you want to do that is because when you have a place to put dishes, you wash them more quickly because you're not having to be strategic about where to place them. Obviously, when you're piling things on top of an already occupied drying rack, you're playing dish Jenga, you're building this tower and you've got to be careful. Or maybe you have to lay out a towel or a dish drying pad next to the drying rack. And it becomes a lot. That having been said, if you've got a lot of dishes to do, you might want to create additional places to put them. You might need a drying pad next to your drying rack. Or you might say, Ronnie, I don't have a drying rack. I don't have a drying pad because I'm supposed to use the dishwasher, but I'm facing a dishaster, meaning not everything's going to fit in the dishwasher when I go to do dishes. Maybe grab a bath towel, fold it in half, and place it on your kitchen island, the area next to your sink, or even your kitchen table if it's close by your sink area. That's often the case in a real small kitchen with a nook. Anyway, make sure that you put away your clean dishes and that you have plenty of space to put your newly washed dishes without putting a lot of thought into it, okay? I promise you that's going to speed things up and it's going to make the job more pleasant. And of course, once you get the dishes put away, you want to make sure that you have the right supplies ready. If you use a dish cloth or rag, remember, new day, new rag. You don't want to keep using the same one. You don't need to sniff it to see if it's good. Just take it to the laundry room and get a fresh one. Okay. If you're like me, you like to have a few things handy. You like to have some type of sponge with an abrasive side and a soft side, whether it's a Scotch-Brite or Scrub Mommy or whatever. You also like to have a dish rag because that's probably what you're going to use to wipe down countertops after you do dishes, even if you're using the sponge to do the dishes. Of course, you want your sponge to be clean as well. It's good to have a few of those in stock. I do run sponges through the washing machine with things like rags and towels. That's one way of doing it. There's a way to clean a sponge by heating it up in the microwave for a very short time. You can Google that or whatever. It's beyond the scope of this episode. But you might want to have a fresh cloth, a fresh sponge with an abrasive side, or maybe you use a separate abrasive tool. There are those little green squares that are just abrasive. Sometimes that can be you can use that plus a dish rag, like use that for the initial scrubbing and then the dish rag to make sure that you're wiping the dishes and getting, grease removed and such. But you need something abrasive, something soft. It may be in different items. It may be something that you flip over. Another thing I like to have is a brush for the pre-rinse, like a brush with a handle. That way you're not, touching these chunks of food with your dish rag or your dish sponge. You're getting rid of that stuff first. You're getting rid of the chunks first, so to speak, with this brush on a handle. And some people like to just let the water run and do everything with a dish brush on a handle. It's going to use a lot of hot water. It's going to use a lot of dish soap. It's going to be time consuming. But if you have an aversion to submerging stuff, you might do it that way, but that's not how I do it. So, be working on your dishes, whatever that means for you. Just kind of the order of operations is that I like to do a pre-rinse with that brush on one side of the sink. And of course, your sink might be all one basin. And then I I clean out the other side, make sure it's clean if it's not already, fill it up with hot water and liquid dish soap. And then I put those pre-rinsed items into soak. And of course, I start with things like glasses and silverware. Now, I mentioned not putting those in the sink. I do put the glasses and mugs in the sink when I'm standing right there getting ready to wash them. But I don't let them sit in there because people drop things on top of them sometimes and it can break the glass or mug. But I do a little bit of a soak, when I first fill up that sink with the hot dishwater. Okay, because that's part of the process. Another thing that I do sometimes do, though, is I soak them on the countertop. Like if I see a little ring of milk in the bottom of a glass, I get some hot soapy water in it and I set it aside if I feel like it's going to need to soak longer than just a couple minutes while the water cools down a little bit. Okay. I am the type of person who doesn't like to do a lot of scrubbing, so I try to be strategic. I try to plan ahead and soak things during my process. Some people have a different style, especially men, where they want to just get in there and scrub and use the elbow grease. But if you're like me, you like to let the cleaning products do most of the work. So when I'm kind of filling up that first sink load, and you might just be doing an empty reload and run of the dishwasher first, but I'm kind of talking about hand washing here. A lot of times I try to fit everything in the dishwasher. Whatever's left, I'm washing in the sink. But whether I'm loading the dishwasher or hand washing cups and glasses, when I see some that are going to be more difficult, that need to soak, I try to get those soaking right away and then tackle those at the end of the session. Make sense? The glasses that just need to be dumped or a quick rinse can either go right into the dishwasher or right into the dishwater, whereas I might have some things sitting in my kitchen windowsill or next to the sink that are soaking a little bit, and I'll work on those later in the process. Okay? So I typically try to get all the small stuff into the dishwasher, and you may not have a working dishwasher. You may prefer not to use one. So if that's you, you're probably going to do sink loads that include glasses and silverware, then sink loads that have plates and bowls, changing the water as needed, of course, and then ending with the pots and pans. For those of us who load the dishwasher first, we're probably going to have a few items soaking. We're going to put kind of the easy stuff into the dishwasher after an initial pre-rinse. And then once we get that going, we're probably going to hand wash a few things that, maybe those glasses with milk rings in them or something. And then maybe the largest pots and pans, if we didn't want to put those in the dishwasher. I try not to put my largest skillet in the dishwasher, but rules are made to be broken. If there's hardly anything in there, then I feel like it's okay, if the entire load is pots and pans. But in general, I will lately, and if you've listened to older episodes, I go through phases, but usually like my little pasta pot, my little saucepan, maybe a 12-inch skillet will go in the bottom rack of my dishwasher because I don't need that space for plates because we're mainly using paper plates. And then the top rack is glasses, bowls, and strategically placed cooking spoons and spatulas. Of course, there are containers for the silverware. Okay. But then at the end, I'm going to be scrubbing a few bowls and glasses that needed to soak by hand, like after I get the dishwasher running. And then I'm going to probably wash that largest skillet. And ideally, if that needed to soak, I will have soaked it at the beginning. Now, since this is a dish-focused episode, I want you to get all your dishes done. I really do. I want you to get caught up so that you've got a clean slate because it's easier to keep up than to catch up, especially when it comes to dishes. But sometimes something needs to soak. After you've done the first couple sink loads or you've started your dishwasher, sometimes there's a pan with burnt on food that just really needs to soak. My trick for that is using some dishwasher detergent in there, whether it's a pod, a liquid, a powder, to kind of, supercharge your soaking session. Some people will boil a pot on the stove. They'll put salt in it. There are other ways to kind of make your soaking time more effective. Okay. But if you do need to soak something, I encourage you to finish washing it at the end of this session. And you may be thinking, oh, I want to let it soak overnight or whatever. I get that. But I encourage you, if at all possible, to finish washing that at the end, because sometimes there's a tendency to get into a cycle where you're washing the easy stuff and soaking that, difficult pan or two, and you get into just a cycle of perpetually having something soaking on the countertop, it can be disheartening. It doesn't look clean, and it makes it to where you have to deal with that, like at the beginning of your next dishwashing session, and just, yeah, let's try to get caught up, because then you can avoid disasters for a while, okay? You're always going to backslide, if you will, fall off the wagon. Things come up that are more important than dishes at that moment. I get that, okay? But this episode is to help you reset your dishes. So I'm encouraging you to just bite the bullet and scrub everything by the end of this session, okay? Maybe you're plugging away at either loading your dishwasher or washing things in the sink, but you see something that's going to need to soak. Maybe stop what you're doing and get that soaking so that it'll be easier to wash at the end of this episode. While you're working on dishes, I want to talk about preventing them from piling up in the future. Believe it or not, it might only take 15 or 20 minutes a day to keep up on your dishes. You might be thinking, I've got a large family, I cook a lot from scratch, or, someone else is making a mess in the kitchen and using a lot of pans when they cook. I get it, but trust me, with the right systems and routines, you can make doing dishes a lot easier. Obviously, number one rule is taking care of them right away. When you're done eating or drinking, take every dish to the kitchen sink. Always rinse them thoroughly. That makes sure nothing sticks. It'll save you time and elbow grease later. For example, when you drink a glass of milk, don't just set that somewhere. Rinse that milk residue out of the glass right then and there. And obviously, different people have different diets, and there might be different things in your house. It may be a top ramen or oatmeal bowl where the noodles or the oats are getting cemented onto that dish. Rinse that out immediately, even if you don't have time to wash that item right then and there. That way, whenever you do your dishwashing session, it's going to be easier. That said, the system at our house is people are supposed to wash their breakfast and lunch items immediately, because people are preparing those items kind of independently. Then, dinner is the family meal where I'm going to wash all the dishes afterwards, or, in different seasons, someone else might, have dishes on their chore list for that night or whatever. But in general, I take it on myself to wash the dinner dishes after dinner. But I don't want to walk in to prepare dinner and find breakfast and lunch dishes with stuff cemented on or whatever. So the rule is, when you prepare these little meals during the day, that you just wash that item from start to finish by hand, regardless on whether anything's in the dishwasher. I'm not going to belabor that point, because if you've been listening for a while, you already know about it. Now, for those in different situations, especially just couples with no kids, or maybe, a couple who has, or a single parent who has younger kids who are not helping with the dishes. Obviously, your 2-year-old, your 3-year-old, they're not doing dishes. You're cleaning up after them 100%, and as far as dishes. They're probably learning to put away their toys, and that's about it. You might have the system where you load your dishwasher throughout the day, run it at night, once the kitchen's closed, so to speak, and then empty it first thing in the morning, okay? And you might be thinking, yeah, I wish I had that self-discipline or whatever. They say it takes 21 days to form a habit. If that's the system you want, you can turn it into a habit. It can become just second nature to you, but you've got to push through those 3 weeks of practicing this habit. For some of us, it's more complicated than that. There's a lot going on. Maybe you're homeschooling and you've got a lot of people there during the day. or, someone messier than you is preparing meals. They're all different scenarios, okay? So maybe that system isn't for you, but I wanted to throw it out there because the thing where people have to wash their individual dishes by hand isn't going to work for everybody. The kids have to be old enough to do a good job at it. Obviously, you can't force your spouse to do a certain thing. And, let's face it, being bossy with your spouse is not good for the relationship. So that system might not work for you, but the important thing is that you choose a system that does work for you. Okay. You also might be hand washing. So a lot of times hand washers like to just do a good pre-rinse after they eat or use something so that things are easier to wash later. Now, some people like to get things soaking right away because there's a difference between pre-rinsing something and getting it soaking. If I were to do the pre-rinse method, which is not my method of choice, I would not feel like it was effective to just pre-rinse things and then just put them in the sink and then wash them later. I would feel like there was still small stuff on these dishes that I don't see, and it kind of goes against the grain. So I would be more likely, if I was pre-rinsing to wash later, I would want to pre-rinse and get it soaking. Okay. Some people have an aversion to putting their hand into water that has dirty dishes in it. Okay, but I'm okay with it if the dish has been pre-rinsed and then it's placed underwater. So one system could be to keep a dish pan, like a plastic basin, handy where you pre-rinse. Let's say, you eat your cereal, but you're not going to wash that bowl start to finish, or your kid's not going to wash it start to finish. You pre-rinse it under running water, and then you submerge it into the dish pan and let it soak there until you have time to actually wash it. That's one system. But whatever your system, you've got to wash all of your dishes at least once every 24 hours. Okay? And no judgment here if you haven't been doing that. I'm here to help you. And of course, I'm also not claiming that I always do that correctly. Some of you might be feeling judgy, like, why would you leave something to soak when you could just wash it? If you're super vigilant about dishes, then that method might not resonate with you. I know a lot of people train their children from a young age to pre-rinse something and put it directly into the dishwasher so that it's completely out of sight, but that method's not going to work for everybody. Some people have hard water. They have a dishwasher that doesn't work very well. They just like the idea of cleaning by hand. They feel it's more thorough, and in some cases it is if your dishwasher is not effective. It could be a chemical problem in your area, as far as the type of water you have. It could be just a mental thing. You've got to do things the way you want to do them. And you don't have to do things exactly the way your mom did them. You're an adult. You can create your own system. Now, one benefit of the dishpan method, instead of just soaking things in the sink itself, if you are going to leave things for later, I'm not telling you to do that in this episode. I'm just talking about your system. Again, right now I want you to catch up on dishes. Hopefully you're still plugging away at those dishes. And of course, if you finish them before the episode ends, this would be a great time to just do some detail work in your kitchen, wipe down every surface, even vacuum out a drawer or cabinet that's got, crumbs and debris in it. There's always something you could be doing in the kitchen. You could be on your hands and knees scrubbing the floors, around the edges. I'm big on mopping the middles and scrubbing the edges by hand occasionally, okay? But while you're working on the dishes you have to tackle today, or that, that backlog of dishes, that dish asked or that buildup, I'm just talking about different systems. One of the benefits to having just a plastic dish pan for soaking is that if you do find that you're expecting company on short notice, you can literally just stick that in the cabinet under your sink and just put it out of sight. Whereas dishes in the sink cannot be placed out of sight. I don't feel like it looks messy to have a few dishes in the sink as long as it's not overflowing. But different people have kind of a different comfort level. Some people don't want to be caught with dirty dishes at all because, their upbringing was such that things had to be washed immediately after the meal or things had to go directly into the dishwasher. And we may have these standards in our mind even if we're not able to personally keep up with them. Okay, so if you're comfortable with dishes in the sink, that's fine. But if you're not comfortable with that look, but you do want to let things soak, that plastic dish pan allows you to even hide the dish pan if needed. Now, regardless of whether you have a system where people are supposed to be washing things as they go throughout the day, or putting them directly into the dishwasher, if you have a dishwasher, it's always ideal to empty it in the morning. Make that a part of your morning routine because it's going to separate the putting away from the actual washing. Now, I always talk about doing an empty, reload, and run because a lot of times we don't think to empty the dishwasher until it's time to do dishes. So I'm going to keep using that term, of course. It's a thing. But whenever possible, I try to separate the putting away of clean dishes from the doing of dishes because it's so much faster to rinse something off and put it in the dishwasher or just to, take a bunch of dirty dishes, pre-rinse them and put them in the dishwasher if you're not having to empty first. And I feel like other people are more likely to do the dishes voluntarily when there's not some big putting away that has to happen first. So maybe create a habit of emptying the dishwasher early in the day, whether it's first thing in the morning or, while you're, cooking breakfast or whatever it is that you do. I don't cook breakfast every single day. Some days are cereal mornings for the kids and things like that. But it would be a good idea while you're waiting for something to cook to empty your dishwasher. Maybe get up a little bit earlier if you're going to work outside the home or something and, make time to empty that dishwasher. And with some things, with some routines, before it's become second nature, it might be helpful to have an alarm on your phone, unless it just drives you nuts. Obviously, there's a limit to how many alarms I have on my phone. I don't want it just going off all day long. But if you're really set on a new habit, have the alarm go off. I definitely have a start dinner alarm because sometimes I can get sidetracked and I don't want to start dinner too late because if dinner is not prepared on time, people are more likely to start snacking and then I don't have as much participation in the dinner. I want the dinner to happen on time so that more people eat that home-cooked meal that I'm making an effort to prepare. So same principle applies if just your main struggle right now is dishes, to have an alarm saying empty the dishwasher. Your future self wants you to empty it before you go to wash dishes. Now, I talked about washing dishes every 24 hours. Even if you're keeping up on dishes to some extent, you want to have a time of day where you wash all your dishes. And if you're like me and, you're predominantly staying home, you might want it to be multiple times a day. Okay. I think about dishes like 3 times a day as far as, in the morning, trying to empty the dishwasher and drying rack when possible. checking on the dish situation at lunch, where a lot of times for me that involves, it's summertime right now, calling out the kids like, hey, who didn't wash their top ramen bowl or their cereal bowl? Okay, you can only expect what you inspect. When it comes to kids, you've got to, follow up on your rules and make sure that they are being followed. Okay, so there's that. And then obviously closing the kitchen is important. We have episodes about opening and closing. Opening involves putting away clean dishes usually. Closing involves washing all the dishes either right after dinner or later. It just kind of depends on whether you're willing to go back to the kitchen later. Okay? Because let's say that after dinner, you typically watch a movie with your spouse or something. You may just go to sleep after that, and you may not want to get back up and do dishes. If that's the case, do them immediately after dinner. But the benefit of kind of closing the kitchen later, if you have this, if you have it in you to do so, is that if people are snacking, you can clean up after that. But one solution is just to do all the dishes after dinner and then kind of make a rule, just like how people are supposed to deal with their dishes, throughout the day or whatever, whether that's putting them in the dishwasher, washing them start to finish, pre-rinsing them, getting them soaking, whatever your rule is, you can have an even stricter rule after dinner, like, okay, the kitchen's closed, so if you make a snack now, you need to wash that item from start to finish. Okay, the dishwasher's going to be running for 2.5 hours or whatever, so if you fix a bowl of ice cream, wash that bowl. And again, I'm not saying to nag your husband or become his mother or something like that. I'm talking about kids when I'm saying have people do this or that. With a spouse, one of the most effective ways to get them to clean up after themselves is to just do it yourself. I don't mean necessarily cleaning up after them. I'm talking about cleaning up after yourself, because when people are in a clean environment, they're more likely to clean up after themselves and keep that area clean. Okay. And obviously, sometimes the division of labor is such oftentimes that you do clean up after your spouse and they're just one person and things like that. Don't come at me. Most of my listeners are the primary housekeeper. Okay. And there are probably things that your husband does for you. So you might be doing dishes for your husband, and yeah, I make no apologies for that. But if you don't like, if your husband doesn't have the right, or significant other does not have the right habits that you want, you can let them know that you wish they would do a certain thing without nagging. Kind of a good marriage tip is to express desires instead of criticisms. Not, you never do the dishes, or whatever. You never rinse your bowl, and I've already cleaned the kitchen and you leave this bowl. And my husband's like a better housekeeper than I am, so I'm definitely not talking about him here. I'm just talking about, different things that I've heard and seen from people in my circle and listeners who write in. But this tip that I'm talking about is not just about dishes, it's about marriage in general. People feel attacked when you make you statements instead of I statements, and you criticize instead of expressing your desires. Because believe it or not, your significant other, especially a husband, he wants to know what is expected of him, or he might feel like you're setting him up for failure. Because you might be thinking, I'm going on a rabbit trail here, be working on your dishes, but you might be thinking that, well, he should know, I shouldn't have to tell him this or whatever. Okay, that's kind of the opposite of nagging, is you don't say anything at all, but then you're just bitter and angry and unsatisfied because he's not doing something you want. Okay, this isn't about just rinsing a dish here. I'm just talking in generalities, but it could apply to dishes or a lot of other things. But if you never express your needs and desires, then they don't even know what you want. If you criticize them and nag them, that's not good either. So the happy medium is just kind of, expressing your desires in a positive way. This could look like saying, thank you for rinsing your dish last night, or, I really appreciated that I got up to a clean kitchen because you rinsed your dish, or, insert whatever it is, because you might be thinking, I don't mind doing all the dishes or whatever, because my husband's working, 10 hours a day in the hot sun, but there are a lot of things that I'm unhappy with about him. Okay, try this. Try expressing gratitude when he does something that you want. Or if he just never does it, try to express it as a desire. Like, it would make me feel so good if you took the time to do X, Y, Z. I mean, he could still be offended or irritated, but it comes out better than the you blah, blah, blah. Or you could even say, when you don't blah, 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 it makes me feel like you don't care. Any of these can be fight starters. So the best case scenario is the thing where you're saying, thank you for doing such and such. I really appreciated it when you did this. I really liked when you did that. That's the best way, is to catch them doing the thing you want and express gratitude, because none of us, regardless of gender, likes to be criticized, attacked, nagged. But at the same time, the opposite end of the spectrum is just expecting people to read your mind. Sometimes women are a little more intuitive about relationship issues and things like that. I'm just speaking in generalities. Everyone's different. But men want to know what you want so that they can please you. They don't want to be set up for failure, but you've just got to be smart in how you present it so that they don't feel criticized or emasculated. Where is this coming from? I read a lot of books, and I have been married for 30 years. Again, my husband is a naturally clean person. He's good about household stuff. But even with him, for example, if I don't keep a hamper in the bathroom and I drop my clothes on the floor, eventually he's going to start doing the same. The first course of action when you're wanting to turn over a new leaf as far as keeping up on dishes or keeping some other area of your home clean or clutter free is to change yourself first. Show people by example what you want done, and oftentimes that's enough, and you don't even have to have these conversations. And people who are naturally clean will step up when they are in a clean environment to begin with. You don't want your kids or significant other to feel like it's futile, that they're in a messy house anyway, and then they don't clean up after themselves. So hopefully you've gotten your dishes done during this episode, and maybe also gotten some relationship tools. Okay? Men are different than women, and it's important to be careful in how you present things. As women, we tend to criticize our partner more. We tend to criticize our man more than he criticizes us. And we wouldn't even be able to handle the level of criticism that we dish out sometimes, in keeping with the dish theme. So I hope this gives you some food for thought. Express gratitude. Don't set them up for failure by not expressing your desires, but present them as desires and not criticism. And better yet, try to just catch them being good and, express gratitude. And also change your own behaviors first. Maybe announce your system like, I'm starting to wash my dishes as I use them so that I don't have as many dishes to wash at the end of the day. My husband would call something like that a hint. Okay? Maybe give a hint. And as far as dishes are concerned, you've got to develop a system that works for you. You have to develop a system for preventing dishes from building up throughout the day. And you also have to find a certain time of day that you do all the dishes that are still remaining, that you complete the process. And it may be multiple times a day if you're like me and you don't like it to be a huge project. And of course, no dishwashing episode would be complete without me suggesting that you get some disposable products during this season of life that you're struggling with dishes. You may not always need paper plates, but you may need them right now. You may need paper bowls. You may need plastic utensils. You may need disposable cups and a Sharpie marker to put people's names on them. You may just need to assign a cup and tell people to use this cup throughout the day. Special thanks to our financial supporters who support the show either on Patreon, Spreaker, or Apple Podcasts. There'll be a link in the episode description about the different options for supporting the show. There'll be another link for supporting through Spreaker. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, which is that purple app that comes with your iPhone, then you're probably being advertised the Clean With Me unplugged episodes. It's easy to just click on those and sign up for that. Supporting us financially is greatly appreciated. We don't expect it, but we sure appreciate it when someone does. And we honestly feel that you will benefit from having at least 3 additional episodes per month, often 4, for additional cleaning motivation. And we do get a little more personal in those paid episodes. Sometimes I'm walking around with a headset cleaning while I record, so you can kind of clean with me in real time, so to speak. Definitely check those out. But even just listening to these free episodes helps us. We understand not everybody is able to sign up to support the show. So most of all, just keep listening and click follow on whichever podcast app you use. We appreciate each and every one of you. And as always, happy cleaning. I'll talk to you soon.